Wow. So you mean to tell me that the United States of America actually dictates what goes on in Jamaica? Welcome back to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It is your host with the most. Listen, family, I don't fluff the news. I just bring it to you just as it is, and we get into the facts as they are laid out. I might put my personal opinion in there, but that's for later. So this article first was printed in Jamaica that says Jamaica is now to look to the Philippines, India, Nigeria, and other places for doctors after the U.S. visa rules restrict Cuban doctors. So I thought, why would U.S. visa rules restrict Cuban doctors for working in Jamaica? If Jamaica and Cuba has a relationship and the doctors are allowed to go from Cuba to Jamaica, they don't have to worry about what's going on in the U.S., right? Well, I was so wrong. So I'm reading through the article as it was put out in Jamaica, but guess what? The article was put out in Jamaica, not giving the full facts. So shout out to my subscriber who said, SouFlo, look at this because this makes more sense. So in Jamaica, Nationwide News Radio says Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says that new rules imposed by the United States, which will effectively prevent Jamaica from hosting Cuban healthcare workers, will pose a significant challenge for healthcare in Jamaica. Wow. New rules from the U.S. that are imposed by the United States of America will effectively prevent Jamaica from hosting Cuban healthcare workers, doctors, and nurses. This will pose a significant challenge for health care in Jamaica. So the U.S. has the power to affect healthcare in Jamaica, and our leaders in Jamaica are playing along, giving them that power. He was speaking on Thursday at a meeting of the Standing Finance Committee of Parliament. Dr. Christopher Tufton, the minister, was responding to questions about the impact of the U.S. government's announcement about visa restrictions for public officials from countries who are benefiting from Cuban labor export program. Long story short, guys, the United States of America is planning to take away the visas of those who are in public service or public officials who benefit from this program where the Cuban doctors and nurses come to work in their country. So because these Jamaican officials don't want their U.S. visas to, this is not about the people, this is about them, because the Jamaican officials do not want their visas to be taken away by the U.S., their U.S. visa. They are going to have to look other places, to India and Nigeria and Philippines, for doctors to come work in Jamaica instead of going with the Cuban doctors. I've checked with a lot of Jamaicans, and a lot of Jamaicans have said, I love the Cuban nurses that are here. They never speak to you disrespectfully, even like our Jamaican nurses with the attitudes and stuff. They do their work. They're very knowledgeable about what they do. The Cuban doctors are great also. Jamaica and Cuba has always had a good relationship. I know a lot of people are going to say, but Cuba is communist. Well, isn't Russia also? and Donald Trump and Putin are like bench and bati, if we call it that in the Caribbean. So I'll take it from somewhere else. Concerns are now growing as the U.S. threatens visa sanction over Cuban doctors. Visa sanction over Cuban doctors. The government of Guyana said that it will be working through CARICOM to get the United States to soften its plans to sanction countries that benefit from Cuba's medical program. The United States on Tuesday expanded visa restrictions over Cuba's dispatch of doctors overseas, a program Habana sees as a source of influence and revenue, but which has long faced accusations of exploitation. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a Cuban American himself, and someone who hates the communist government in Cuba, said that the United States will now also bar all visas to foreign government officials who assist the program. This is where the problem is for Jamaica. Once Marco Rubio said he will now bar all visas for government officials, foreign government officials who assist the program, Jamaica started saying, well, we don't want no more Cubans. Let's go looking in the Philippines and Nigeria and other places because the U.S. said. Cuba has been sending scores of doctors over years, and also hundreds of Guyanese doctors and other professionals have benefited, including Jamaica as well, from scholarships to study in Cuba. Now, on Tuesday, Marco Rubio said that the United States was immediately imposing visa restrictions under the expanded policy on several people from Cuba's ally, Venezuela, and other immediate family members of sanctioned officials would also be affected. So, people, this is what the Jamaican government itch up is. You see? Not only did Marco Rubio say it was going to affect the officials, it said their immediate family members would be affected as well. You talk about throwing a monkey wrench in somebody's business, because even if these officials said they could take my visa, I don't care. But I want the best doctors here in the country to take care of my Jamaican people because they elected me to look out for their best interests, and I think it's in our best interest as Jamaicans to continue to keep these Cuban doctors in Jamaica. Forget what the U.S. said. Let U.S. take care of U.S. Instead of them saying that, they go back to their rooms and their houses and they say, damn, them can take my daughter visa, you know, and my wife visa, you know. Not just mine. I don't want my family to be grounded. We want to fly out, go foreign. So frig the Jamaican people, I'm sorry. But the Philippines and Nigeria, we gone. America said no Cuba, so I know Cuba it is. It's kind of like when somebody say, I'm 10 toes down in these streets, murderer, gangster, never snitch, don't work with police. And as soon as the police catch them, right, and bring them in a little room and said, listen, you're looking at the rest of your natural life in prison. You're 35 years old. We're giving you 75 years at a minimum to serve before you're even eligible for parole, unless you start talking right now. Soon as they say that, all that gangster 10 toes down in these streets, don't snitch, never talk to police, all that goes out the window. Suddenly, I'm going to tell you exactly how it went, officer. It was me and John, we went up 7th Street, we made a left on 8th Street, and then we went right into that building. John went through the back, and I went through the front, and we went inside, and he had the gun, and I had the rifle, and, and they tell everything. This is Jamaica's politicians throwing Jamaicans way up under the bus, sacrificing Jamaica's healthcare, Jamaicans in Jamaica's healthcare. Make me understand, how is it okay for the U.S. to do business with communist nations like Russia and like China, but Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean is not allowed to do business with Cuba because, according to Marco Rubio's take, he hates the Cuban communist regime. Furthermore, why is it okay for the Jamaican government to bow down to what the U.S. says because they're trying to keep their visas? Jamaica doesn't have the power to restrict visas or visa travel to Jamaica by Americans, or they will never do it because their system would crumble. If you don't know it, most tourists, say Jamaican officials would make a stand, right? Most tourists that come to Jamaica come from the United States of America. We have lots of tourists that visit Jamaica on an annual basis. A lot of them come from Europe and other places, but majority of people who keeps the wheels of tourism turning in Jamaica, which you know is their number one blaster of their GDP, they are from the United States of America. So Jamaica couldn't even boycott or respond in a way anyways, because it would affect them more than anything else. So for instance, if Jamaican leaders are like, okay, if we use Cuban doctors and you take away our US visa for that, we will then require a visa for you to be traveling into and out of Jamaica, you and your citizens. So you guys will have to apply for a visa from now on, and we will approve at a very slow rate how many of you we feel like should visit our island on a yearly basis. See, that's a stand that Jamaica cannot even afford to take. So in other words, they just have to play along with the United States of America. They say no Cuban doctors. Jamaica has to go somewhere else to go find doctors. Not just Jamaica, but the entire Caribbean region. Cuba, which frequently highlights its universal healthcare system, has sent doctors and around the world. And it is known that Cuba has some very good doctors. Has sent them around the world since the 1960s as it promotes itself in developing nations. The program has become a major source of needed cash, particularly after the Soviet Union's collapse deprived Cuba of a major benefactor. Now, Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez said that Rubio's decision was based on lies and will affect health services to millions of people, not only in Cuba, but around the world. Specifically for me, in Jamaica. Now, once again, Marco Rubio is placing his personal interests above those of the United States. This was not affecting the United States in any way. This was something personal because Marco Rubio is a Cuban. But Marco Rubio hates the government in Cuba. So now that he is in a position of power in the United States of America to flex his muscles, he is planning on hurting Cuba financially by grounding their doctors and nurses, having them not be able to be distributed overseas where they earn good money and can then contribute back to their families and back to the Cuban GDP. He is saying, ground them, and anybody who works with them, we are taking away your USA visa, and not only that, but we're taking away the visas of your close family members as well. This is not standing on business for the United States of America. This is standing on Marco Rubio's personal feelings. Now, according to Cuban official figures, Cuba has sent 22,632 medical professionals to 57 countries in 2023 alone, with Cuba earning $6.3 billion in 2018, $3.9 billion in 2020, in part in the form of oil from Venezuela. Critics characterize the program, well, Marco Rubio is characterizing the program as forced labor. None of the Cuban officials or none of the Cuban doctors and nurses are saying this is forced labor. For them, this is an opportunity. Marco Rubio is classifying it as forced labor. And the United States, under former President George W. Bush, launched a program to encourage Cuban doctors overseas to defect. As soon as they send you to work overseas, run away. Do not go back to Cuba. Come to us. We're here to help you. Wow. What a divisive plan. That means they wanted to take away all these highly skilled, intellectually superior individuals. Human Rights Watch groups had said that Cuban doctors are deprived of fundamental freedoms as they live under draconian rules overseas. I don't know about that. I don't know. I would have to see how they're treated in Jamaica. And I know in Jamaica, I know Cuban doctors. At least I know 2 Cuban doctors in Jamaica. I don't know all the Cuban doctors in Jamaica, but the 2 that I know, they live really, really good. Matter of fact, they live above the average Jamaican's way of life living. But Marco Rubio says that they are deprived and they live under draconian rules overseas. Since returning to office last month, President Donald Trump has swiftly sought to ramp up pressure on Cuba. He reversed a decision by his predecessor, Joe Biden, to take Cuba off a list of state sponsors of terrorism. That means Donald Trump has placed Cuba back on the list of state sponsors of terrorism. The Biden administration agreed to lift the designation, which has severe effects on investments, in return for Cuba's release of some political prisoners. Now, meanwhile, addressing the issue at his weekly conference on Thursday, Vice President Bharat Jagdeo said that Guyana will be a part of the CARICOM mission to engage Donald Trump's administration on the threat to impose visa sanctions on the leaders and their families of these Caribbean nations who are beneficiaries of the Cuban labor export program, including the medical missions as well. He was asked to comment specifically on whether Guyana would stop taking members of the Cuban medical brigade in light of these threats by the United States. Jagdeo told the media that the government has carefully examined that statement that was released by the U.S. concerning the Cuban Medical Brigade in countries and the potential sanctions against the said countries for collaborating with Cuba. Notice he did not say, "we will stop." He said, "we are carefully examining the statement." The statement made that they will be taking away U.S. visas for officials, government officials, and their close family members if they work with the Cuban Medical Brigade. He reasoned, he said, now you know that the Cuban presence, a medical presence in the Caribbean, has been there for a very, very, very long time and has transcended several U.S. administrations. The Cuban medical presence in the region has had some positive impact on healthcare delivery across the Caribbean diaspora. This issue is not just about Guyana. This is about the entire Caribbean region. Wow. Wow. Yo, y'all hearing this though? Jagdeo highlighted that the CARICOM's last head of government meeting, an agreement was made to engage the Donald Trump administration so many issues, as they felt that he should see the region not through the eyes of a third party, but directly get the views of the Caribbean leaders of the region. According to Jagdeo, Secretary of State, he said that U.S. Secretary of State Rubio, Marco Rubio, has been in contact with several leaders of CARICOM, President Irfan Ali included, so it is anticipated, given the impact it would have on the region, these threatened visa sanctions is one of the many issues on which CARICOM leaders will have to jointly approach and address the U.S. government on, he said. Still, there are several other issues, so Guyana will be part of the CARICOM approach to the U.S. administration. it will be done with, I guess, at the leadership level of the region by the regional leaders directly with the State Department or the White House. We hope that we'll be able to do so, but not just on the Cuban Medical Brigade, but on trade, matters on aid, matters on deportees, he said. Further, the Guyanese government has made it clear, and Jagdeo believes that this is the view of other countries in the region as well, that they will accept without any conditions their nationals. Okay, so he went off into talking about accepting your nationals when they are deported from the United States of America, coming back to the Caribbean islands, they will be deported back to. Okay, that's not what we're talking about, Mr. Jagdeo. We're talking about getting doctors who are competent, who are highly skilled, who will be here on the ground to look after the people in these Caribbean regions, particularly me saying Jamaica because I am from Jamaica. How is this going to affect Jamaica? For all my Jamaican people listening this is how we get caught up in the politics of the United States of America. I know a lot of us live in the United States of America, and a lot of us have respect for the United States of America, so we live here, we work here, we raise our families here. We came here for a better way of life because there are lots of opportunities here that we can exploit. So we owe the United States of America some level of respect, right? But with that said, we must also sit back and with a clear view, look at how Jamaica, the island itself, and the people who live there who have not been able to fly out of the country, don't have a visa for anywhere, they are there day in, day out. How will their health care be affected when this goes into effect? If they decide we want these good Cuban doctors to continue to work on our Jamaican population, and the U.S. says, well, sanctions, visa restrictions, take away all the visas for your leaders, your government officials, take away all the visas, U.S. visas for their close family members, their wives and daughters and sons as well. And then our leaders say, if it's either my visas for my family and myself or listening to what the U.S. says and doing what they say, then I'm not risking my visas. So the Jamaican people are just going to have to do without good doctors, do without the proper amount of doctors until we can source some doctors from places like the Philippines and Nigeria and India instead. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this one. In Jamaica, we have a saying. And the saying says, when the U.S., you know what? I'm not even going to say it. But just know, say, when the U.S. sneeze, everybody catch cold. This is what we talk about when we say that. I'll catch you all on the next video. Matter of fact, I'll see you in the comment section of this video so I can talk with some of you there. Alright? It's SouFLoTV. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified every time a new video goes up on SouFLoTV. I'm out. Peace.